Hello, and welcome back to the Remnants of Naezith individual level discussions. On this episode, we're going to be taking a look at Ponddle, which is another one of the early levels in Jade. Much like Threshold, Ponddle is a straightaway horizontal corridor with a lot of things to grab on, leading to an open remnant at the end. It's fairly easy to complete, there's no real tricks to it as long as you build up a little bit of a speed, you don't even need to dash towards the end. But again, getting fast times on it is not particularly easy. So with all that said, let's jump right in. Alright, to start things off here with a beginner level run, I have a run that actually puts me pretty high up. I was kind of surprised. This one puts us around 65th. It's not terribly difficult. All it is just a series of grapples and dashes and jumps. So let's jump right in, I guess. The first thing to note about Ponddle is that, unlike Threshold, we don't start high up off the ground. We start on a level platform, so we can't generate free speed by just falling off the platform. We actually have to build up our own speed. So because of that, we're going to start this off with a big jump. Big old jump. That way we can grapple on here and use that slight height that we gained off of our jump to build up some speed with a grapple. Our goal here is to grapple onto the top here with a very long grapple. Remember that the longer a grapple is, the more speed you will generate, and that's going to be our goal for most of the grapples throughout this, is to grapple along the top, keep on moving on, and generate as much speed as we can. So for us, that looks like this. We grapple up here. You can see a nice long grapple. It gets us just barely above the ground, and then we're going to do a dash jump. Now for this dash jump, we want to do a relatively small jump because our goal is to get our character over this way and then just over the top of this lip so that we can grapple on here with a fairly long grapple again, generating more speed. So for us, that looks a little bit like this. You can see our release jump there, and then grapple here, fairly long grapple. Now once this grapple is complete, our next goal is going to be to grapple somewhere up here. So that means that we're going to need to do a fairly large jump to make sure that we maintain our speed up and over this thing, and then we're going to grapple up onto here. You can see a big jump, and then we grapple onto here. Again, hold it until the vertical, and then you can see that I do a dash jump. Now this dash jump, again, isn't going to be super big. Our objective with this dash jump is simply to get ourselves up and over top of this next one. Of course, we have a lot more speed here, so a larger jump will just send us flying up and hit this top one. But we want to be just over this one so that we can grapple onto here and use that as our final grapple to build up a ton of speed. You can see we do a relatively small jump, gets us just over top of that, and then we grapple here, release at the vertical, and then do another dash jump. And then as we come flying in towards the end, we're just going to throw out one extra grapple here. It doesn't exactly matter where it hits, it just helps us build up a little bit of extra speed, which will get us to the end faster. So just to do a quick run through at 1x speed, grapple, dash jump, grapple, maybe at half-time speed, grapple into a small dash jump with another grapple, we jump to our next grapple, dash jump, grapple, dash jump, grapple. Nothing here is too difficult, it's just making sure that you get up and over top of those barriers in the middle, over top of those platforms, making sure you don't bonk, and making sure that your grapple is maximum range. That way you'll generate more speed and get a pretty decent time. Alrighty, so moving on to the intermediate run, I have here a run of 4.191, puts us 37th, so within the top 40. Again, this one's not super complicated. I don't think the expert one will be super complicated either. The final difficulty will be for sure. But let's hop right into this one. I'll just show this once at full speed so you can see what's happening here. Fairly simple. So, let's break this down. Off the start, again, we're going to do a jump, and then for this one, it's a small hop. We're going to here input a grapple and a jump so that we do a pull, and then we're going to want to let go immediately and do a simple grapple afterwards. This will help us to generate a fair amount of horizontal speed, but you'll also notice that we're very high up compared to where we were before, right? Before we were doing a full grapple along here, and then we had to dash jump to gain some height. Here we can actually use our dash just as pure horizontal speed. We don't need to worry about the height component because we're already really high up. So that means that our next grapple, because we're so high up, is going to give us a lot more speed moving forward. You can see that. We do a dash, and then a grapple here, and now we're really cruising. Here we're going to do a jump and then a grapple onto this upper part here. So this is an in-between grapple. Of course, our more important grapple is going to be this one, because that's going to set us up for hopping over the next floating platform there. But this first grapple, remember, when you're grappling, it increases your maximum speed. So the more grapples that we can get in, the better. So you're going to see we grapple onto here, and then without doing anything else, we're going to let go and grapple onto here, and that's just going to give us a little bit more speed. So we grapple, and then we let go, we grapple down here, and then we do a dash jump over the platform, and then everything is the same as beginner. We grapple on here, do another dash jump, and a grapple at the end. Just to show that once more, this is a pull into a grapple, so that we're a little bit higher up. We do a dash into a grapple. We do 2 grapples to get a little bit of extra speed, followed by a dash jump, and then another dash jump. Now, one thing that I do want to point out with this one is that right here, this intermediate grapple, this is pretty good. You can see I release just before the vertical so that I'm actually still falling downwards. I don't want to hold on to it too long and then gain some upward speed and have a really crappy grapple here. But this second one, you can see that I will grapple right here on the platform. And ideally, I would actually want to grapple right over here on this very far edge underneath this, so that I fall down as far as possible before grappling, just to get a little bit of extra speed. You can see I grapple right there, but preferably I would want to grapple over here instead. That's just a little improvement that can be made on this if you choose to use this route. But everything else, pretty good, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. If you put a little bit of time into this one, you'll see some great results. Moving right along, we have here an expert level run, which, even to my surprise, puts us at 8th place. This goes to show that even suboptimal routes can be optimized pretty heavily in this, which is really cool to see. But I digress. One of the things you might have noticed at the start of our intermediate run is that we actually had to jump at the start here in order to hit the ceiling with a pull. That's because the ceiling is too high up to actually grapple while you're standing on the ground. You need to jump first in order to grapple onto it. So one of the things that you might have thought to try is, well, maybe if I add a dash with it. And the problem with that is if you do a dash pull and then try to cancel into a grapple, it actually sends you flying up into the corner way too high. So with this expert level run, we actually find a pretty easy way to combat that. So for us, our run is going to look like this. So let's break that down. The key thing here is at the start, you can see that we buffer our inputs as a dash and holding to the right. And then we're actually going to wait a few seconds before inputting a grapple and a jump to do a pull. That's going to look like that. Now here I add in an extra grapple just after the pull to make sure we get a little bit of extra horizontal speed. But the important thing is that our pull hits the underside of this vertical column here. As long as we hit the underside of this, that makes this next part possible, in which we go flying up and actually bonk our heads on the very bottom of this. And by bonking our heads, you can see that all of a sudden our Y movement speed down here has gone all the way down to practically 0. It cancels all of our upward speed so that now we can start dropping down immediately. In general, if you bonk your head on a ceiling, you will actually start falling faster than if you were to, say, do a jump cancel or something like that. It immediately cancels all your speed, and it doesn't matter how fast you're going into it. Very useful stuff in certain circumstances. So moving on, after we hit the top here, we're going to want to do a grapple very early on actually. You can see that we're quite far away from the wall, our grapple is very lengthy, and the purpose for grappling here instead of waiting to drop down a little bit is one, we want to make sure that we actually grapple onto the ceiling. It's very easy to wait a little too long and then not be able to hit this grapple. Maybe it goes into the corner and just barely doesn't hit, or it hits somewhere else and gets a lot shorter. So that's the first part. The second part is that after this grapple, we're going to want to do a full jump into a grapple here. And in order to hit this grapple, we actually need to be pretty high up relative to where we would be if we drop down a little bit further. So we go higher up so that we can hit this grapple. And then part of that is that once we let go, we can start falling down. We'll get a little bit more speed moving through. You can see we switch on to another grapple. And then from here, it's the same as always. We do a dash jump into a grapple, into a dash jump, into a grapple at the end. So just to show that off one more time, we do a dash into a pull and a grapple, followed by a grapple, jump, grapple, grapple, dash jump, and then our usual ending. Again, nothing here is too complicated. It's very common with this beginning strat to accidentally do your pull too early and go sliding up the side of this thing. That just means you have to wait a little bit longer. So don't feel discouraged if you're doing that a bunch of times. It just takes a while to generate muscle memory for that. I will see you for the next part, which will be the final difficulty level for this IL. Okie dokie, we are here now with the Descendant level strategy for Ponddle. This is the one that I believe everybody in the top 5 or maybe even further down does. I think Plastic and Spins do something similar to this. But for the purpose of this, we're going to be showing off Chesda's run first, and then we're going to move on to Midge's run afterwards. There is a slight difference between them that I will note, but for the most part they use the same idea. So I'm just going to show them both off now. This is Chesda's run, and this is Midge's run, and you'll notice that the main difference is that final floating platform at the end there. So let's break this down and see what's actually happening here. This is pretty complicated. So the first thing that you're going to notice is that just like before, we are inputting a dash and the right direction. Now as soon as the level starts, that's immediately after the level starts, one tick in or as close as you can get. You can see here we're 88 milliseconds in. We're going to input a grapple and a jump to do a pull, which will look like this, and then we're going to want to jump cancel. Very difficult to see, there's not much timing there. Do a jump cancel into another immediate grapple. So I'm just going to show that off once more, see if I can pinpoint exactly when the jump cancel happens. So we do a pull, and then you can see here a little bit there's a jump happening right here, and then an immediate grapple afterwards. And that jump cancel will allow us to swing underneath here. So not only are we not flying up the side here or doing some very slow strategy, we're also getting a bunch of height, but also having a little bit of extra speed moving through here. Different from the expert route is that we're actually falling down sooner here than we are on the other one. You can see that right now gravity is taking over and we're right here. With the other one, we bonked somewhere in the middle of this under part here, and so we would have started falling a little bit further to the right. And this just means that our next grapple is going to be longer and give us a little bit more speed. So to show that off, we do an immediate grapple here, and we just barely make it above that ground thing. And now this is where things get a little bit more interesting again. We have some divergence here. We do a jump with a grapple, and we're actually going to hold the jump all the way through the grapple. And then we're going to do another one here. Holding the jump there just means that we're gaining a little bit of height even as the grapple is going on, so that we can make it up and over this floating platform here, but also so that we're up high enough to grapple this top part without jumping again. So now we hold on to that top part, and then we do a grapple here. You'll notice that we grapple as far to the right on this as possible so that we have fallen as much as possible to gain more speed. Following this, we do a dash jump, again with the goal of making it just over top of this little lip here without bumping it. We do a final grapple onto that top part here, and then the ending is just the same as we know it. We do a dash jump into a grapple at the end. So just to show that off once more here, so we do our after the start pull into a jump, cancel, and a grapple. We do an immediate grapple after we get past that part jutting out from the top. We do a jump into a grapple, and then just another grapple without jumping. Grapple as far to the right as we can on this. Do a short hop to just make it over top of this middle platform. And then a max range grapple, and then our standard end. Now, if we look at Midge's run, it's very similar. You can see he does the same thing with the jump cancel, the grapple, another grapple here, full jump hold, second grapple here. Except in this case, Midge opts for a full dash jump here, so that he can grapple onto the top, and then he grapples onto the bottom again for a little bit extra speed. Now, he actually ends up with 1744 max movement speed, which is the exact same that Chesda had. But the big difference here is that Midge is flying into this remnant much higher up, which means he's going to start falling down sooner and then grapple this, and that grapple is going to give him a lot more speed because he's carrying a little bit of extra downwards momentum into it, just like so. So you can see slight divergences in the route. There's a lot of optimization that goes into these. I'm still fairly far behind, and one thing that I want to point out that I think I have in my run still is that I actually managed to do a one-tick jump cancel here, and I believe a one-tick jump cancel is actually not optimal here. I think you want to jump a little bit sooner and have a little bit more height so you can grapple this upper part here, which leaves you with a little bit more speed going out. I'm not certain on that, but I believe this is one of the instances where a one-tick jump cancel might actually be suboptimal. So just a little interesting side note, but that will be it for this video. That has been Ponddle. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to leave them in the comments or on Discord. If you noticed anything that I did wrong, again, don't hesitate to tell me about it. In the next video, we're going to be moving on to Soggy, which is a level that I hate, so you can look forward to that. But that will do it for me. Thanks for watching, and have a wonderful morning, evening, night, or whatever it may be. Take care.